Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast series for financial advisors. Today's episode is Unlocking a Niche, a 30-year Wirehouse veteran on building a $1 billion independent business. It's a conversation with Gerry Spitzer, founding partner of Questar Capital Partners. I'm Louis Diamond, and this is the Diamond Podcast for financial advisors.
At Diamond Consultants, our mission is to help advisors live their best business life. We want every elite advisor to find exactly the right place for their business and their clients to thrive, whether it's at a wirehouse, a regional, boutique, or independent firm. As the industry's leading recruiters and consultants, we've transitioned more than $250 billion in assets under management in the past decade, and each year, 25% of transitioning advisors who manage $1 billion or more are our clients. If you'd like to talk, please feel free to give us a call at 908-879-1002. Are you a financial advisor who's curious about whether you're in the best place to serve clients, or if there might be a better way to optimize your business for the future? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a new book that serves as a self-guided journey, walking you through the key steps that Diamond Consultants takes with our advisor clients, whether considering change or not. Visit diamond-consultants.com/thebook to learn more.
Many of the most successful business people often share that pinpointing a target market is the key to building a thriving enterprise. Yet, it's not always easy to achieve. First and foremost, you need to have a value proposition that resonates and you can deliver on. Yet, it's the second part that can be difficult. As an advisor in a large wirehouse, you may be limited in what you can provide to your clients. And it's that very reason that many leave the big brokerage firms and start their own independent businesses. Gerry Spitzer built an extraordinary business in the wirehouse world. Starting with the training program at Merrill, he met his partner Richard Riley, and together they invested 20 years at the firm, building a practice focused on exit planning and ESOP strategies to help business owners monetize their life's work. Yet, like many of their peers, they felt like things changed at Merrill once Bank of America took over. After careful due diligence, independence seemed like a bridge too far at that time, while UBS offered the support and strategic alignment they desired, along with the ability to serve their unique client niche. A decade later, after building the business to some $850 million in assets under management, they decided it was time to consider their own succession plan and path to monetization, and they didn't see UBS as the right partner for this part of their journey. The great news is that the independent space had matured quite a bit since they last looked around. In 2022, Gerry and Richard left UBS to launch Questar Capital Partners with support from Sanctuary Wealth. Today, they are managing $1 billion in client assets and see this as only the beginning of their new chapter. A chance to unlock a new world of opportunity. What changed? How did they achieve such exponential growth in just 2 years of independence? In this episode, Gerry answers all that and more, including what inspired them to change firms 2 decades ago and later opt for independence. Gerry also discusses what they can do differently as business owners and how they can better serve their client niche. Plus, Gerry offers advice on the due diligence process, which we're happy to have guided him through. There's lots to discuss, so let's get to it. Gerry, welcome to our show today.
Thank you, Louis. Glad to be here.
Very good. Why don't we jump in and tell us about your professional journey and background and what led you into the industry, starting with Merrill in the early 90s?
Okay, great. I started as an accounting major at Binghamton and went right into public accounting at PricewaterhouseCoopers in New York. And it was a good training ground for business, but accounting wasn't for me. And I spent a couple of years there, got my CPA, passed my exam, and then moved on into a sales role in a Hewlett-Packard dealership and tried to understand a little bit about mixing sales with finance and accounting. And I always had a love for the market. So it just kept pushing me in a direction toward the investment markets. And that's where I ended up after dabbling in the computer sales arena for a few years.
I think you picked the more lucrative path in the end.
I hope so.
Everything though built on each other, and each experience you had, the accounting, working for HP, it all probably helped inform the way that you work with clients today and led you to Merrill. So things happen for a reason.
Agreed.
So then what brought you to Merrill in the 90s?
Well, I was looking at both private client and institutional sales, and my expertise in technology almost had me a job offer in middle market institutional sales. And I was, told that it's definitely a burnout type of profession, and it's good for a few years. And I was really looking for something longer term. So I met with basically a family member that was a successful Merrill broker down in downtown New York, and he convinced me to take a shot at the Midtown office since I lived up there, more toward Midtown. And he said the manager is great. Put a resume in, and the rest is history. Joined the training program back in '92.
Off to the races. So, do you recall? I know it was a while ago, how you started building your business. So, how did you get your first couple of clients, and any tips or tricks you can share with our audience?
Well, back in the day, it was really a lot about stock picking and understanding the stock market and getting clients to invest in equities and fixed income, but definitely a focus on stock picking. So I basically cold called out of a white pages phone book. And my strategy was, before I teamed up, I was on my own. And you'd basically call into one geographical area, try to book appointments and go see several people in a given day and just try to book appointments around that. And the pitch was really about doing planning and investing in stocks. It was a mix of both. It took a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours, and you definitely have to be passionate about the business and liking people, liking challenges, because it's a long road to build a book from scratch. And with as Lewis, the failure rate in joining training programs on Wall Street is very high. So I knew the odds were stacked against me, but I really worked hard.
Yeah, and it seems like with most guests we have in the show that started in those training programs in the 80s, 90s, even early to mid 2000s, the foundation of getting started is cold calling, which is either impossible now because a lot of firms restrict it, or it's just much harder to connect with people over the phone. So, do you think if you started in this environment, if you were in your 20s in 2024, 2025, do you think you could have been as successful as you are today?
I mean, that's a very good question. I know that what takes success is you have to be driven and you have to really enjoy what you do. So I think both those traits are still the same. It's just a matter of how you go about it. And it's difficult now in this age because a lot of it's email. A lot of people get junk emails. So it's difficult communicating with prospects. So you have to be very creative these days and probably do live presentations and webinars and have a niche. Like a niche is important. So
Yep.
coming up with a niche and a focus is really important.
I agree with you. Yeah, and we'll spend some time talking about the business owner focus that your firm has. But let's do some more of the foundational kind of setting the table type stuff first. So today you run Questar Capital Partners, an independent wealth management firm with your longtime partner, Richard Riley. Can you share when the two of you joined forces and how do you guys work together?
We teamed up right in the training program at Merrill, and we're instantly partners. And it's funny because as skill sets were very different, and we found that having different skill sets really made very good partnership over the years. And what we did was we basically started out going after institutional type clients, non-qualified deferred comp, 401ks at large companies, and working with the executives at those companies that needed assistance and working on company stock and those type of benefit plans. So that was really our focus through the 90s, I would say. And we work well together. Richard's a CPA and MBA, and he's a portfolio manager of our team and always has been. And his passion is investments and making our clients a lot of money. And my side is more of sophisticated planning and understanding the client's objectives and needs and building from there. So
Yeah,
it's been a great partnership.
I like that because I mean, look, there's some partnerships where people are pretty much clones of each other, and that's what makes them successful. Is just someone is doing the same thing as them, double the inputs, triple the outputs type thing. But I think what makes a great partnership is exactly the dynamic that you and Richard have, where each of you does what you're passionate about, what you're best at, and together you have a very comprehensive puzzle that you build. So I would assume that's probably been a secret of your success. I mean, we see so many partnerships fizzle either around succession planning or one advisor wants to grow 30%, the other one wants to golf 4 days a week. So would you agree that it's the difference in skill sets, but also like-mindedness that has made you guys such a successful and cohesive team? Or are there other elements of the relationship that have been predictors of success?
You're exactly right. We have both mirroring values and that we're very passionate about our clients and keeping our clients happy and working with new people that are good challenges and good people. And we're both hardworking and we both want to grow the firm. And we've had that consistent vision for a long time. And it's just basically building the right personnel within the team or the company and making sure that you could do that. But I think that is the secret to success, is to have, even though we're very different in our skill sets, we're very similar in our kind of value approach to the business.
No doubt. Yeah. If your values aren't similar, everything else breaks down. That's the non negotiable usually. So, Gerry, for some perspective, can you share a bit about Questar Capital Partners today, the size of the firm, your team, and maybe a bit about your value prop to clients?
Okay, great. We're approaching $1 billion, which includes about 150 million of ESOP assets today. So that's quite a milestone for us, considering about 30 years in the business. We're a team of, with our new hire, 7, and we offer financial planning, asset management, and the whole business owner services, which we'll get into. So we're a lean crew, but a hardworking crew. Basically, everybody in our company has been in the financial services area for quite a while. So I would say that we're well experienced. Our value proposition for clients, both private clients and the business owners we work with, is to really offer platinum level of service, sophisticated financial planning, and for entrepreneurs looking at all aspects of their life, including when to exit, and how to financially be successful. Asset management is the part that Richard handles for our team. And that is basically every single client's going to be slightly different in their approach. And I think that's what makes this business so interesting, is that literally every client we look at is a slightly different puzzle, and we're their financial puzzle. And I think that that's really what we do as a team. And we take pride in basically being able to solve those problems for our clients.
I really like that. Well, first of all, congratulations to you and Richard and the whole team on getting close or surpassing $1 billion in assets. I mean, people work their entire careers to be a quarter or less as successful as you are. So that's amazing. Obviously, a testament to all your hard work. And I'm a big fan of what you said about each client. Is I think at the end of the day, that's the core function of any advisor's job function, is to solve problems for clients. But I like calling it a puzzle, because a puzzle is something that's fun, it's engaging, and each one's different. So I think that's a really cool and refreshing way to look at it. So let's rewind a little bit. You spent 20 years at Merrill before moving the team to UBS in 2012. If you can recall, what motivated you to change firms from Merrill after 20 years there?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy at Merrill. We're happy with Merrill's management, Merrill's strategy, Merrill's technology commitment. When Bank of America came in after the financial crisis, or during the financial crisis, it changed the whole, let's just say, vibe of the firm, in that a commercial bank now has slightly different goals than an investment management firm. So basically, credit cards, checking accounts, savings accounts become more important as Bank of America moves into the Merrill Lynch clients. We really didn't see eye to eye with that strategy. So we just started looking around both at Morgan Stanley and UBS, and we thought we'd want to change. We weren't 100% sure. And after meeting with both firms, we felt like both firms were ahead of where Merrill was at the time. And we made the move to UBS. They were committed to support us in our kind of institutional business. And that was the decision we made in 2012.
And back in 2011 or 2010, when you started thinking about leaving Merrill, aside from looking at Morgan Stanley and UBS, did you think about independence, or was that not even on your radar screen at the time?
It was not. Didn't know a lot about independence back then. I knew Hightower existed, and I know there's other firms, but at that point, we want to do institutional business, both corporate stock options and business owner services. So at the time, going independent would have been a stretch to do that type of business. And it really wasn't really in our radar at that point.
Yeah. And I don't think that's unusual. I mean, independence and the breakaway movement, you mentioned like Hightower, which was popular at the time. There wasn't too much else that was developed in the independent ecosystem like it is today. And the analogy of the snowball rolling down the hill hadn't really picked up steam yet. So I'd say most teams that change firms around 2010, 11, 12, 13. Maybe they heard of independence, they considered firms like Hightower, but it wasn't really as popular or as mainstream as it is today, where we see even teams that end up going to a Wirehouse or going to Raymond James or RBC. Most conversations or processes we run with advisors, there's at least some passing interest in looking to understand the independent space. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But 10 years goes by and you're at UBS, built the business. And then in April 2022, you decided to launch independent firm Questar Capital Partners. So can we talk a little bit about your motivations for leaving UBS? Like what was going on at UBS that caused you guys to want to spend some calories on considering alternatives? And then also your motivations for going independent.
Okay, great. I mean, it was a big decision to leave the brokerage world after spending all the time at both Merrill Lynch and UBS. And I think we decided we wanted to bet on ourselves, but it did take a lot of work, Louis. You were intimately involved with our looking around at firms. And we spent an awful lot of time both looking at Dynasty and Sanctuary and liked both firms quite a bit. I know recruiters like yourself would mention other places to look. And to be honest with you, we just didn't have the time to run our existing book of business and spend so many hours per week exploring this independent option. So it did take us quite a while to look, but I think at the end, we decided that we wanted to bet on ourselves. We did look at Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Stanley made a nice offer, and it would have been great to work there as well. But we really felt like it would have been the same. And when people ask me about independence, I feel like this is a little dramatic, but you're in the brokerage world working for the legal folks that run the firm are in control, it seems these days. And I feel like you get used to prison food after being in prison for a long time, and then you start believing that the food is good. And then all of a sudden you leave prison and go independent and you realize there's a lot of different restaurants out there. So it's a little bit of a dramatic analogy, but it is true in a lot of ways that when you go independent, you can market yourselves differently. And it's just a completely different mindset. And I felt like if we went to Morgan Stanley, we would have been selling our soul a little bit. And even though it's not all about money and compensation, and I think for us, it was the challenge of starting our own firm and trying to do it our way, and hopefully it works. And I think that's ultimately what we're betting on.
I like that. Yeah, when you're talking about prison food, I just have an image of Morgan Freeman and Shawshank Redemption talking about being an institutionalized man. I guess if you want to extend the analogy, we can go down that path. But I don't think we're here to talk about Oscar-nominated movies.
No, but Louis, the other thing too is really the technology investment wasn't there in the UBS platform for us. And then when you look at independence, you look at the tech stack available at both Sanctuary and others, and you really can't compare what's out there in the marketplace versus what the firms are going to allow you to use, from a CRM to financial planning and sophisticated financial planning, and be able to market yourselves differently. And then the way UBS worked their ESOP business, it's much better for us on our own than it was being at a big bank.
Yeah. And ultimately, given where the AUM is and everything you guys are doing since going independent, it seems like it was the absolute right move for you. But it did take betting on yourself, foregoing a big deal, and also moving away from the life that was comfortable. It was the devil you knew for 30 years or so.
That's right.
In thinking about leaving UBS, how long were you feeling certain frustrations? And was there one event or thing that happened that was the ultimate decision maker to invest time in looking around and ultimately leaving? Or was it a buildup of a number of different things over the years?
No, I mean, it was a buildup of management changes, strategy changes, lack of new technology. And then I had a friend from UBS that went independent on his own, and listening to what he did definitely got us excited about that opportunity. So sometimes it takes somebody that did it and succeeded, and listening to the pros and cons from that person to help you motivate to go start the process of looking, because I don't want to underestimate the time and effort it takes to look and travel to these places and really explore this option, because we're pretty anal about doing our research before making a major decision like this.
Yeah. And I have to ask, this is my one self-serving question of the interview, but you alluded to the fact that our firm was lucky enough to represent you and Richard and the team. Can you share a little bit about the reasons why you opted to work with us and some of the things that we helped you guys do in the process?
Well, I'll say that I've worked with you over the years, and you guys have always kept in touch and always kept us abreast of what's going on in the marketplace and what's around without being too hard sell, which is really, that works well with me. And you guys did a great job of offering us two or three independent firms where we thought we could do our business owner and ESOP and exit planning businesses that would be a good fit. And you were right on with the recommendation. So I think you listened to what we're looking for and you matched us with the right people. And that's about all you can look for in an executive recruiter.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Again, self-serving. Always good to hear the things like similar to you, hearing from clients why they hired you. And it just helps us be better. So thanks for sharing that.
You're
So
welcome.
I have to ask, since we're recording this episode, the heels of UBS announcing a fairly major compensation plan change at the end of 2024. You're probably not as intimately familiar with it as you once were, but you've probably heard of it. And so I'm curious, if you were still at UBS, how do you think you would feel about this compensation plan change?
Look, the honest answer, Lewis, is that I'd be numb to it because I've been going through compensation changes since the mid 90s in the business, and it changes every year at every firm. And there's always tweaks. Sometimes they work in your favor, sometimes they work against your favor. So I never really got too caught up in the changes. But I will say, when we explored the independent option where you have control over your expenses and you can estimate your revenue, you just have much more control over where you want to invest the money and not just be at a big firm that makes all the decisions on how they invest their capital. So I think ultimately compensation is just about where you're going to invest the expense, and investment banks have their own vested interest, and profitability is important to big banks, and stock performance and things like that. Those don't matter to us. We can invest in where we think is the right place to invest, and the compensation will follow. And I've always believed that. So I don't get too caught up in the year-to-year changes at the big banks, even when we're there, because you have so little control over that you just got to push forward and stay positive.
I call compensation plan changes, it's basically the tax of working for a major firm. Like, there's a lot of really good things that your taxes are going towards, whether it's supporting the brand or building out technology or beautiful office space and human capital. But at the same time, the part of taxation is that policies can change, and advisors either are comfortable, like you said, just taking on the chin, accepting that it's part of life there and staying, because either they still get a ton of value from the firm, regardless of compensation plan changes, or we do see comp changes as not the reason people leave, but oftentimes it's the straw that breaks the camel's back or crystallizes the feeling that folks want more control and agency, not just over compensation, but over everything they're doing for their clients. So I think it's a wise perspective. So let's talk a little bit about your decision to partner with Sanctuary Wealth. So we've had many Sanctuary teams on this podcast. We've interviewed executives, and they're a fairly well-known entity within the industry and kind of the supported independent movement. So I'm curious, what was it that drew you to Sanctuary? And you had other options you could have picked from. You had the scale to start your own RIA if you wanted to. So why did you decide to partner with Sanctuary?
Well, Sanctuary offered the options to be as independent as we wanted to. It was partnered independence. We did not know of Sanctuary at the time. There were ex-Merrill folks that started it up, and we were at UBS for 10 years. So we weren't familiar with the management team at Sanctuary. But I think once we met with Sanctuary, saw their commitment, their top management, very focused on growing and supporting motivated, good teams from the brokerage industry. They're willing to coach us because obviously we're nervous, as everyone is when you make this move. They're very fair economics, and they had a very impressive tech stack that they worked hard to design that made a lot of sense to us. And on top of that, they're very willing to support our movement into exit planning. So I think it's the combination of those factors that really led us down the Sanctuary path. And it took quite a long time, many meetings with them in person, virtual, to really get comfortable, not so much with just Sanctuary, but the independent process and all. So it was a bit of a leap of faith, I will say, just not Sanctuary themselves, but just going independent. It's a little bit like going into the haunted house at the circus, and it's very dark in there, and you have no idea where you're walking and who you're going to walk into.
You got some dark analogies, Gerry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But I mean, it is the truth, but it all worked out great. And we made a very good choice with Sanctuary, and we're very happy there.
Yeah. And I remember too, you mentioned putting a lot of time and effort into understanding how your ESOP business could be supported in independence. And I think advisors gravitate to platforms like Sanctuary and many of their competitors for help with office space, with getting everything set up, not knowing what they don't know, staying focused, et cetera. But I think a really good specific example of where the value of a firm like Sanctuary comes in was on your exit planning business, where there's so many different things you have to figure out and all the different moving pieces. You're moving away from having everything under one roof to kind of unbundling the entire value chain of supporting business owners. So having a partner like Sanctuary or anyone else like it is using their intellectual capital, their connectivity, and their scale to try to piece the puzzle together, to use your term earlier. So I think that's a really good, tangible example of how an advisor might think that a support partner could benefit their business, aside from the basic blocking and tackling.
Yep.
So how do your clients respond to your move to independence? Given 30 years or so in the wires with some of the best firms in the industry, did you have skeptics, and how did you address their concerns?
Yeah, that was an interesting time. And I will say that the positives of independence, and I would say the younger you do it, the better. But I will say you're still going to put in some time, and it's going to be probably 3 to 4 months of very hard work, talking to clients multiple times, getting them comfortable on this change. They're used to one investment firm, well-known firm, and now it's a bit of leap of faith for us going independent and for the clients to follow. And I will say there definitely were skeptics. And I think the Schwab name, where we custody our assets, was helpful. I think people had to understand who Sanctuary is, who Questar is, and Schwab. So now you have three different new names for clients versus just UBS. And I think it's just communicating the entities, how their assets will be managed, and that there's really no change for them as far as the management of assets, planning, and that there's going to be a huge upgrade in technology. So I think it's really just walking people through that, and them also probably being a little bit nervous. So it was definitely 3 or 4 months where you're going to endure a good amount of questions, time working, and all hours, and then just getting the assets moved into the Schwab platform, or whoever you use, Pershing or Fidelity. Is just whatever platform you're moving it into from the big brokerage environment. So there definitely were skeptics, but we've been with these clients, many of them, many years. So we definitely felt a little bit bad about putting them through this, but we did promise them that at the end of a few months, everything is going to be much better than it was. And most of them now agree that, now that we're almost 3 years into this. But like I said, those 3 or 4 months post, just be expected to work pretty hard.
Yep, I think that's right. And very reasonable for everyone. I mean, it's re-education for clients, and they don't have the same understanding or benefit of a year of due diligence like your team had. They're just finding out about it and expected to move their assets. So it's not surprising that there's some skeptics or just a lot of questions. To me, it starts and ends with what's going to be better for them in this new environment. So aside from better technology, what were some of the key benefits that you highlighted and that folks got excited about?
It's going to be, obviously, technology is big. The platform for investments. So if you're a financial advisory team at UBS, UBS has to bless all the investments that you're showing to clients. Now it's much more open architecture for investments. The financial planning software, eMoney, considerably better than the UBS version of MoneyGuide Pro that was used. For estate planning, charitable giving, tax planning, all of those were wins for the client. So I'd say that the majority is really the investment platform that we had to work with. And then we're typically able to lower our client fees as well. When you work for the brokerage firms, you have to be at a certain fee level, and we're able to decrease those slightly for our clients.
That's great. And let's talk. I want to spend a decent amount of time here talking about your focus on working with business owners. You started off by talking about the importance of having a niche, and you've definitely developed one. And I know you've been very excited about the benefits of how you can better support business owners in this new environment. So let's start ground floor with business owners. What unique challenges do business owners face when you're managing their wealth? And how does your firm look to address these challenges or needs?
Great. Well, thanks. The business owner market is very interesting. And you're talking about business owners and multiple owners of businesses that are valued somewhere between 20 and 200 million. And because baby boomers are getting older, even if they're not ready to sell their businesses today, they need to start thinking about a path to sale. And the earlier you start thinking about it, the better off they're going to be. And there's some very unique situations in that space. One is I talked to a furniture manufacturer in Florida not too long ago, and many of the profiling questions that we're used to asking over these years is the key to really understanding what they should do next. But this client in particular, this person in particular, had 95% of their net worth in the company. And when you get to be early 70s, it starts getting to be a little bit of a desperate situation to get out and sell to private equity. There's not that many choices because you just need some liquidity, estate planning, assets to live on in retirement, and someday retire successfully. So it's interesting in getting back to the kind of puzzle analogy with private clients. It's a more sophisticated puzzle with business owners because you really have to look at various aspects. One is their liquidity need, succession planning. What is your plan day to day in living post sale? If you're out of the business, what are you doing? Are you golfing, traveling? So you need a successful or at least a path of how you're going to be happy if you're not involved with the business day to day. Is there family intertwined with the business? Cousins, sons, brothers, getting involved with insurance and estate planning and buy-sell agreements. So it's a complex set of criteria in talking to business owners that I find that even more fascinating than the work we did in public companies with stock plans and things of that nature.
Very interesting. So, Gerry, I'm wondering, where does your role stop and that of an investment banker begin?
Basically, Lewis, what we'd like to do is take the role of profiling the owner or owners, getting a good understanding of what they're looking to do, retire, stay on for a while, take some chips off the table and cash out some. What does their estate planning look like? What does their charitable intent look like if they have? And how are their family members involved? And then we could talk about asset management as well. All those things are very important factors. And we have to get a good understanding of what they're looking to do. Then we go and introduce an investment banker from our platform that we think would be a good fit. And if we feel like we need to look at two different bankers and explore two different bankers' approach, we'll do that as well.
Basically, you sit over the entire exit planning process from start to finish, where a banker is an important ingredient or participant in the process, but they're going to have a kind of defined role. And you're the one who's really guiding the full process and the strategy around it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you could say quarterback, but I think it's more of a coach because I think that the key to getting a good exit is that there's a lot of players involved. And you have CPAs, attorneys, independent trustees, investment bankers, and you have two different sides of the transaction, and we're responsible for bringing in probably the right team. And I think our role is the bringing in the A team for every transaction. And it's based upon size of the transaction, the industry group. So the investment bankers that we recommend to certain cases is going to be typically based upon those factors: size of the deal, industry experience, and things of that nature.
That makes sense. And there's a ton of teams at UBS and at all the major wirehouses that specialize in serving the business owner segment. And I would assume they do it quite well. So Obviously, you served that segment at UBS, probably at Merrill, and you could have kept serving them the way you were. So now with 3 years of experience in the independent side, what do you see as some of the tangible differences between serving the business owner segment specifically as an independent versus at UBS or Merrill or Morgan Stanley or any other firm like that?
Yeah, I think the big banks basically have a cookie cutter approach. And I think that it's not their fault when you have thousands of financial advisors calling into just one or two exit planning or ESOP teams at these firms, that it can be overwhelming. So they have to go cookie cutter approach, and they'll only use floating rate notes, new issues. In the independent space, there's a couple things that we do differently than the big banks, and we don't have profitability goals and things of that nature. So we can go out and fund qualified replacement property for ESOP deals, very different than the big banks. And we don't need to new issue floating rate notes. We can buy floating rate notes on the secondary at much better pricing for the clients. So you're going to see much better pricing on placement of QRP. And then on the loan side of a 1042 ESOP transaction, we can go to market and get various quotes from various banks on best terms for the client. So when clients are doing a $100 million ESOP transaction and they're taking out $100 million or 90, let's just say $90 million loan against $100 million of QRP, if you save a quarter of a point, you're saving an awful lot of money. So I think that our ability to go out and look at different banks for different pricing is going to save clients an awful lot of money in the long run.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess it's what you do is much more specialized and complicated than getting a client a mortgage, but it's similar. Where if you want to get a mortgage when you're at UBS or Merrill, you have one place where you can bring it. Otherwise, it's selling away. Sometimes the rate's going to be great. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes they'll be interested in the deal. Sometimes they won't. So it seems similar. But to your point, when you're dealing with such large asset bases and deals, even a quarter point rate difference makes an astronomical difference.
It's true because your analogy is right. Because even when we're at UBS, when we're doing a mortgage at UBS, we had one rate, and that's the UBS rate.
I've done a decent amount of work with teams that specialize in the ESOP segment or that do a lot of lending. Is there any credence to the fact that if an advisor is captive or on a platform at UBS or Morgan or any major firm, that the firm can relationship price because they have revenue from their grid retention, from cash, from alternative investments? Is there any benefit, you think, to having that relationship pricing and the advisor being able to press their firm to step up and be aggressive? Or do those benefits go away because now you have all these different options that you can leverage against each other?
No, I can understand that if I'm working at the bank, then I'm going to talk about those options and those benefits. But I think in real life is that there's profitability goals at the big banks, and we all understand those. And we worked at big banks for a long time. They have shareholders and they have minimums. So I think that when you go independent and you're willing to bring your margins down and shop deals, I think the client wins. I just think that we're literally in the top or bottom of the first inning for independent advisory firms in the exit planning space. And there's very few teams really that are doing this in the independent space today. And I think that as clients hear more about the benefits, instead of just going right to a big bank, I think they're going to be much happier when their deals are shopped. They're going to save money and get the same level of good service.
Very interesting. Can you share an example? You obviously don't have to provide names or anything identifying, but where you this kind of customized or unbundled approach to serving business owners through a transition or transaction event really, I think, highlights what you're talking about.
Yeah, we did a deal up in Boston for a retailer with 100 locations. It was a complicated deal that involved communicating to the owners. The owners wanted legacy. They wanted to keep control. They were happy with a tax-free transaction, and they were excited about their employees becoming owners of the company. So it was a huge win all the way around. And I think it was exciting and fun communicating all these challenges to the new employee owners. And I think the owners saw originally they wanted to use their own bank for financing in margin, and we showed them alternatives. in the banking space that would save them a lot of money. And ultimately, they went that direction.
Do you think if you're at UBS for this transaction, would you have won it?
That's a very good question. And the honest answer is, I am not sure. The truth is that if we were brought in, we're at a big bank like a UBS, and they didn't bring in an independent person to compete with the big bank, then we probably would have won it. If they brought in an independent advisor specializing in exit planning in the independent space to compete with the UBS or a big bank, there's a good chance we wouldn't have won it.
Interesting. I see what you did there too. Nice way to plug your services. Very creative. Entrepreneurs have a very deep personal connection to their businesses. I mean, I see it every day when we help advisors think about legacy planning and selling their life's work and their legacy as well. How do you build trust and align a client's personal financial goals with their ultimate business ambitions?
Louis, I think it's the same approach with business owners as it is with our private clients. Now that we're in an independent space, I'm not sure why this is, but we've received a lot more referrals from existing clients talking to the new prospects. And we tell everybody, whether they're a business owner looking to do an exit or a private client, we're going to take the time to understand your short and long-term goals and objectives, understand your balance sheet, and explain to you and communicate to you how you're going to need to get to where you need to get to. And we're going to do all that before we start taking on moving your assets to Schwab or starting with the investment bankers coming in and doing presentations. We really take the time to get to know you and get to understand your values and your goals and objectives. Ultimately, I will know in the first hour or two whether your fit is going to be an ESOP, whether it's going to be selling to a strategic or private equity. Pretty much we'll know that right away. And I think that's just years of experience of doing profiling and understanding and asking all the right questions and really trying to get to the heart of what they're trying to do. Because look, many times this is the biggest transaction these business owners are going to have in their lifetime. And it's almost like selling their baby. This is something they've built from scratch and they take it very personally. So you have to have empathy. And I think that those are the most important things when you approach this business. This is not just a quick transaction, get as many done as you can in a quick period of time. This is really taking the time and not rushing through this process.
I think that's right. And that's also probably a benefit too of working with someone like you who's an exit planning advisor instead of just working with an investment banker, because a banker's directive is to sell a business to the best possible person for the best possible price. But it is more transactional, where yours is more of a relationship and it's about developing the trust and understanding their goals. So it makes complete sense why someone would want to work with an exit planning advisor like your firm.
Yeah, and you get a lot of practices. I became the president of the New Jersey chapter of the Exit Planning Institute. And I think that's really a mechanism to meet many of these owners and work with centers of influence in the middle market space. And that's something I probably wouldn't be able to do at UBS because it's marketing and it's a little bit of out of the box.
Well said. So I'm curious to hear about how you and Richard think about succession, eating your own home cooking. So you're working with all these business owners, helping them create their own legacies and monetizing their life's work. So how did the two of you look at this? Do you think you'll eventually sell the practice, or is it going to be something where you cultivate either your children or next generation team members?
No, that's a good question. And we are not 100% sure. We're not getting any younger, but we have several to many years still left in the business. Selling to another firm doesn't necessarily feel right. We have the internal succession plan that we're working with, and we have the folks in our company or on our team that have the skill set to really take the business to the next level. So I think it's going to be a few years, possibly sell a portion of the business to anywhere from a sanctuary to a CPA firm or private equity. But I would say that it would be a relatively small piece, as we want to keep the internal succession plan the primary driver here. We're open to all options.
I like that you're thinking well in the future of this. Like a lot of advisors, because change is hard, it's stressful, but thinking about your own exit or retirement is oftentimes one of the last things people want to think about. So what happens is you punt and punt until 3 months before you want to actually sell, you start thinking about it. But I think being intentional the way you and Richard are is, to me, the only way to do it. And what you're doing is creating options for your business. You have the option, by all the hard work you've done in cultivating your team, to sell internally. You have the option, based upon your success and how you run the business, to sell it to a strategic if you wanted, to sell it to private equity, to sell it to Sanctuary. And ultimately, when the time is right, you get to control your own destiny. But you can only do that if you're really thoughtful and purpose driven about this years in advance of an eventual transaction. So I like that you actually do eat your own home cooking and are planning ahead and really thinking about the best possible path. But it's okay that you don't know the defined path yet, because different opportunities come and go, and the business will look different a couple of years from now. And so you and Richard, what you want, what you value, et cetera, is going to change. But at least you'll have the options in front of you to make the best possible choice.
True. And that's interesting side note, Lewis, is that firms like ours, many of them want to take some chips off the table and stay in the business for a while. And if your firm has more than 15 employees, you can do an ESOP yourself for your own RIA. And that way you could, if you're set up as a C Corp, you can sell the business tax-free, keep control of the business, and stay on for a while and still earn a compensation and earn a living. So it's definitely an option. I've talked to a few RIAs. It's a little awkward because it's strange being in the same business, but it's a very good solution for a larger team that has at least 15 employees.
Do you see ESOP transactions happening with RIAs?
They are.
Very interesting. And what's the downside of doing an ESOP for an RIA?
Well, the downside is the same downside as doing an ESOP for anybody. Is one of the downsides is that someone that wants to cash out of their business, whether it's worth 20 million or 100 million, many times you want instant gratification of getting all your cash wired to you. You go pay your capital gains taxes and you move on. In an ESOP transaction, I know this is not geared on educating folks on ESOPs, but you're typically not going to get more than 20% of the value cash at close. So you have to be willing to take on seller's notes, stay in the business for a while, and get paid out of company profits over the next several years. So that's the biggest difference as far as your cash at close on a private equity or a strategic transaction versus an ESOP. So many FAs in the business are happy to stay on. And if you do an ESOP in your, let's just say your mid 50s, and you're okay staying on to your early mid 60s, the ESOP can work really well for you.
Interesting. But it presupposes that you have the right team underneath you that can take over the responsibilities. And if you don't have that, then similar to any sort of internal succession plan, your options are a little bit more limited.
You hit it on the head, Lewis, because succession planning for any type of ESOP, from manufacturing to retailing, engineering firms, same conversations I have, because it is stressful for the owners to really think about succession planning, especially if family are involved. So it's also being able to incent the non-family or non-shareholder executive team. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds on these transactions, but those are viable ways to structure deals.
Very interesting. I'll volunteer you, Gerry. Maybe anyone who's listening who has a larger team and is thinking about succession, it seems like at a minimum, it's worth it to understand how an ESOP could work within an RIA context. Because usually when I think of internal succession, it's someone takes a bank loan for a down payment, and then out of the cash flow of the business, they'll get paid out over 5 to 7 years, typically at a bit of a discount to fair market value. So it seems like if someone's interested in that path and has the team behind them to do it, that it's just an interesting way to structure an exit. And it seems like there's a lot of tax benefits and the like.
Yeah, it's true. And as you go in the independent space, it's a whole new world on valuing your firm, because you're at a brokerage firm. You don't talk about value for your team at a UBS or a Merrill Lynch or a Morgan Stanley, because you're in control from a corporation. You don't think of it as your own business and your own value. So it's a completely different mindset.
Two more quick questions to take us home today. When you reflect on your career, what legacy do you hope to leave as an advisor and a leader of a business?
Well, look, I hope that our clients thank us all the time. And it's almost, we thank them for their business, and they thank us for sticking with them all these years and really supporting them and making sure they're making all the right financial decisions and can do everything they need to do. So I think that doing the right thing for your clients and making good decisions, and supporting them and being just an advisor and a friend all these years is what we hope that people would talk about us after we're long gone from the business.
I like that. And last question, any advice or guidance for advisors thinking of change, curious about the industry, et cetera?
What I would say is just be ready to roll up your sleeves and really work hard and build a business from scratch. It's not easy, but if you're the right fit for that career path, you're really going to enjoy it. And it's going to be a ride. It's going to be a long ride, but a very lucrative and enjoyable ride. I would say have a niche, focus on something that you can say that you're an expert in. And our niches have changed a little bit over the years, but I would say focus in on a niche. I also, and this is not a play for you, Lewis, but I would say that the independent space is still relatively new. And if I was starting today in my 20s or 30s, I would say that an independent space is the way to build a career and build a company over the long haul versus at a large brokerage firm. And I would say move on the earlier side so you have the time to grow the business and create value and do it your way. And I would say the last thing is really hiring wisely. We have a great group at our firm. Over the years, hiring's not easy. Finding the right people that are passionate and reward them with equity is really important, and making sure that they're aligned with the same goals that the managing partners or owners are.
I like that a lot. A lot of wisdom there, Gerry. Thank you very much for spending time with us today, hearing about the progression of your practice, how you and Richard form a really effective team all these years. And I really loved hearing about the unique ways that you approach the market, and especially the different ways that you can better support business owners as an independent, and just some of your rules of the road, if you will. So we'll have to do this again sometime, but really appreciate your candor and transparency into your business.
Thanks, Lou. Thanks for your time. And I will say that as you've been in this business a long time, definitely luck plays a role. And I'd say, obviously, meeting my partner, Richard, at the right time and where the right combination is very important. And that's been a key part of our success is our partnership.
No doubt about it. Thanks, Gerry.
Thanks, Lewis.
As a financial advisor, you hold yourself to the highest standards of integrity, honesty, and credibility. You are successful because you take your professional responsibilities seriously and are dedicated to your clients. But are you living your best business life? Are your goals aligned with your firm's, or could a better option exist? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a book written with you in mind. It's a self-guided journey that walks you through the key steps that we take with our advisor clients. This strategic thought process and roadmap to professional self-discovery is designed to help you ask the right questions and think critically and objectively, whether you're considering change or not. Learn how to get your copy at diamond-consultants.com/thebook.